Welcome, everybody. It is 3 o'clock. We should be trying to make a start. Everybody, please settle down. I gather that we've got all of the members of the public who were coming. Is that right?
Ellen,
Not very many.
Mont Blanc.
We need to pause for a moment because Kenny Green is without, this laptop is without. The password is incorrect, it says. Try again.
Yeah, it must be, but we can't get into
Anyway, while they're sorting that out, I can make a start on saying welcome to this meeting. I don't see anyone who doesn't normally come, perhaps one person. Welcome to this meeting, the Western Area Planning Committee. I am going to chair today's meeting, Christopher Newbury. I will talk you through the normal items, which is that we would like everybody please to turn their mobiles or other devices to silent so that they don't interrupt people during the meeting. That includes me. Not expecting any fire drills. If you hear the fire alarm, Ellen will quickly sheepdog us out of the building. So the first item is apologies. I'll explain the procedure when we get to it for the one or two people who aren't familiar with our way of dealing. Andrew Davis.
Chairman, just before I came out, I had a phone call from Councillor Ridout, who unfortunately has to attend an emergency dental appointment and won't be able to, and it was too short notice to get a substitute.
Thank you. That's an apology then. So we can note the, Ellen, we can note the apology of Councillor Ridout.
Yes, no
we
problem.
won't note the reason. That's all not needed. So we will, are there any other apologies for today's meeting other than Councillor Ridout? Looking around the room, do we have any substitutions? Councillor Gordon King. Trevor Carbin. So we'll note Trevor Carbin's apologies and you taking his place for this meeting. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome.
We also have apologies from Councillor Ernie Clark.
And Ernie Clark. So there we are. We've got all of those to go in the minutes. The minutes of the previous meeting on the 17th of January. Does anyone have any corrections or additions or other problems with those minutes as circulated? I'm not seeing anyone indicating, so all in favour, please indicate. Any against? Those are approved. I will sign them in a minute if Ellen, I think she's probably, that's it. Declarations of interest. This is only for members of Wiltshire Council. Nobody else needs to declare any interests in anything. Do any members of Wiltshire Council have any interest to declare in anything on today's agenda? I'm looking around and I don't see anyone. Chairman's announcements, I've done those already, but the only remaining thing is to say that the way we proceed is we have a report. We have two things on our agenda. For each of them, we will have an officer to give a report. Members can then ask questions to the officer. The officer will have a chance to reply. We go into debate and we need to ask people, please, to be, to not to interrupt us while we're in debate. We do have one or two people who signed in to speak as members of the public, so that we take you in between the members' questions and the debate. And in fact, we only have one person signed in. Is that right? Councillor Roger Evans from North Bradley Parish Council. Welcome, Councillor Evans.
And we've got Francis Morland, who is here to make a statement on agenda item 6, planning appeals and updates.
Okay, so that was only one speaker for the North Bradley application, and I don't have a sheet for the other one, but we have Mr. Morland for the earlier item. And I think both of you know our procedure. It's up to 3 minutes for members of the public and up to 4 minutes for members representing a parish council. No other announcements. Do we have any questions under item 5, Ellen?
No, we don't, Chair.
So in that case, we will move smartly on to planning appeals and updates. This is a report by Kenny Green, who is sitting over there, and he will just perhaps add a few words to the written report. Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On the agenda, there's quite a healthy list of appeals determined, and again, delighted to say that every single one of the appeals were successfully defended and dismissed. There is one on, especially one that I would like to summarise, Chair, but there is also an appeal that's came through since the agenda was published, which some councillors may well have picked up, and it was the Ashton Road appeal in Hilperton, which this committee made a decision on and overturned the officer recommendation. That appeal was dismissed as well. So that's a particular good win for the committee and the council as a whole. So just to refresh members' memories, that was a one-house scheme outside of Hilperton in a gap between Hilperton and Trowbridge settlements. The committee put forward a strong argument that that appeal would not only have a detrimental impact on the setting and identity of Hilperton village, it would also be harmful in terms of the conservation area setting, the setting of the Grange, which is a listed building. I'm pretty sure that was a site that members may well have visited prior to the meeting as well. So I think that was particularly useful perhaps for some members that might not have known that site well. But the inspector agreed with all those reasons for refusal, and the appeal was dismissed. There was also an application for costs by the appellant. So confident were they that you got it wrong. Well, that appeal was also dismissed by the inspector. So well done, committee. Now, on that list, there is a particular appeal that I would like to summarise, Chair and councillors, and that's the appeal for land at South at Pound Lane in Semmington. So that appeal was for 30 dwellings for a site outside of settlement limits. It was refused by officers in accordance with our strategic policies, and that decision was made prior to the December NPPF changes. But this appeal had to consider those changes to the NPPF. So we had done one statement, but because the NPPF came out whilst the appeal was still live, the inspectorate asked the council and the appellants for an updated statement. So in our statement, or updated statement, we made the strong case that the NPPF, as revised in December, was very material to the consideration of that appeal, and that full weight should be given to our strategic policies in the core strategy. And although the appellants disagreed, what they didn't do was challenge our housing land supply figure. Whether they didn't have the funds to do it or they didn't have the time to put resources to do it, I don't know. But that appeal was dealt with by written representation, so just an exchange of statements, effectively. And the inspectorate, because it wasn't being examined, the housing land supply, that appeal solely was heard on the basis of a straight balance of the benefits of the scheme against the conflicts in our local plan and the plan process. And it's a definite success post-December NPPF changes. Success for the plan-led system, because the inspectorate obviously gave full weight to our plan-led policies, while still accepting there would be some benefits in terms of the delivery of affordable housing and some market housing. The balance fell towards the plan-based approach, and the appeal was dismissed. So that's definite success, and we will be using elements of that appeal decision for upcoming appeals, where the council are obviously maintaining that we've got a healthy housing land supply and we should be giving full weight to the policies in the core strategy. The other particular appeal I would like to mention, well, there's actually two more, sorry. One is at 1A Wicker Hill at Trowbridge, which unfortunately is a retrospect, or was a retrospective application for the retention of a shop canopy and galvanised steel shutters. In the conservation area of Trowbridge, very close to listed buildings. Officers refused it, citing multiple concerns and policy conflicts. The inspectorate agreed even at appeal stage, the appellant tried to put forward some form of mitigation in the form of applied vinyl artwork stickers to the shutters when they're closed. We didn't fall for that. We thought they would become tatty over time. There wouldn't be something that would be maintained forever, and therefore you couldn't give full weight to that as a mitigation measure, and the inspectorate agreed. So that was another appeal that was dismissed, and because it's retrospective, it's over to our planning enforcement team to get the regularisation for that site, because it's there and it is pretty awful, I have to say. The other appeal, slightly different one, is the development or the proposal at land at 3 Pieces at Hoggington Lane in Southwick. That is, or it was, a development proposing a change of what the agent referred to as stables, but officers saw it as a field shelter. It wasn't a structurally sound building that was capable of being converted to a holiday let. We refused it, citing our core policies CP 39 and CP 48 that relates to conversions of rural buildings and the provision of holiday lets and associated tourist development. They appealed, and their appeal wasn't successful on multiple grounds, not least because they didn't comply with policy, and the inspector fully agreed that the building wasn't suitable for conversion. It's no more than a single skin block building and not complete. So it didn't meet the tests. Even if it did, they wouldn't comply with policy CP 48 because they didn't go through the sequential approach for rural buildings. There are other appeals on that list, Chair, and if any member has got questions on those, I'm quite happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. That's very good. And we've got these 7 appeal decisions, which it's always useful and interesting to have copies of. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? I'm not seeing any hands. So I think we move on to the public forum, and we have Mr. Morland, who has up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I put my name down to speak today because I wanted to establish the principle that public participation, people putting their name down to speak in the public participation, which is limited to 3 minutes, ought not to be interrupted by points of order. I don't think the Wiltshire Council Constitution entitles members to interrupt public participation in that way. Most of the points I would have made on this appeal report have already been covered by Mr. Green, that all the appeals listed were dismissed, and that the Pound Lane Semmington decision was heavily relied on by the recent meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee to refuse other applications of a similar type. The one query I have, which I'm not quite certain about, is that there was, I didn't think this list was complete, and I've checked with my record, and there was a decision at 3 Bradley Road, Southwick, which seems to fall into the listed appeal period, which is not on this list, and so I wasn't quite clear what the criteria were for including appeals on your agenda. It may be that for some reason it doesn't come within your jurisdiction, but I'm not quite certain. Thank you.
Fair enough, Mr. Morland. We'll ask Kenny Green about that. I wonder if it may be something that is fully delegated. Is that it, Kenny?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, if there was an appeal decided between the 5th of January and the 1st of March, then it is just a simple case that it was missed off that list. So it depends on the time that it came through to the council as a decision. So it would have to be reported to this committee if it was a decision for Southwick, because that's clearly within the domain of Western Wiltshire West Area Planning Committee. So the key thing is, was that decision made between the 5th of January and the 1st of March?
Go on then.
The decision was made on the 12th of January, and Wiltshire Council's application number is PL stroke 2023 stroke 00952, if that helps.
Okay, well, shall we leave that one with Kenny to perhaps be brought to us? Oh, you've got something to add, Kenny?
I think what may have happened, Chair, is that the February meeting was cancelled. So that, if that was the 12th of January date, that would have missed the deadline for the January committee. So it had been set up for the February one. But as we know, the February meeting was cancelled. And the team that look at all appeals, they probably forgot to go back further. I think that was just a case of a mistake and not pulling through an earlier appeal, Chair. So apologies for that, but that can always be picked up and reported to the next area committee.
Okay, fair enough. And can we mention to whoever puts the list together that they, when we cancel a meeting, they need to carry things forward? Brilliant. Okay, so I think we are just left with taking a note, probably to note this. Shall I move that we note the report? Councillor Bill Parks, the seconding, I think. All in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, so that takes us on to the main interest on today's agenda, which is the North Bradley application. As I mentioned before, we have one speaker in the public forum, representative of the parish council. We have the case officer who's sitting on my right, who's going to talk us through his report and recommendation, bearing in mind that we've had this before, and so we probably don't need to spend any much longer than we need. Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So we are here for the reasons as set out in the report and in the appendix, which includes the committee report from back in September. The site has always been policy compliant with CP2 by virtue of being a neighbourhood plan allocation. But because the 5-year housing land supply was mentioned by me in the report and my presentation and by the agent and was discussed by members in the debate, is the reason why we need to have a fresh assessment today. There's no late list items to report, so we haven't had any further comments. In terms of following the instruction on the September committee to give us section 106, unfortunately the applicant died not that long ago, and the section 106 can only be signed once the probate has been granted to the executive, process has been finished, so the applicant's name can. So the section 106 name can be legal. Otherwise, the actual agreement itself is very near completion, just with the final draft to be shared with the applicant's solicitor. We can go through the slides if members have any specific questions, but for the reasons we don't need to go through it again. But this application's kind of been caught in the net designed to scoop up all those unallocated sites that we've been dealing with, that you would have heard at a strategic planning application and maybe not have been intended to do this one, but this is why a fresh application's been made. The only one thing to point out further from the Kenny's appeal update was that that Hilperton case preceded the hearing of this app. That was the first item on that September committee, and we were the second. And both of your decisions enhanced the approach that we took to diverging away from the Trowbridge back mitigation strategy, that not to take it for the letter of the law, because that was part of the main debate from this application last time. There is a line in the inspector's report in that appeal that says the Trowbridge back mitigation strategy is meant as a broad document designed to influence the larger housing sites in the housing sites allocation plan, rather than being site specific to individual sites. So the inspector kind of confirmed the approach that members took in those two items on that day. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any questions from members on the updated officer report? I'm not seeing any. Oh, Councillor David Viger.
Yeah, could you just give us a bit more detail on how this diverges from the back mitigation strategy? Because I see on the report, the original report, which is on page 58 of our reports pack, that there are a series of measures have been taken in an effort to provide green infrastructure, and in fact the whole layout was reduced, I think, by around about 30% to comply with bat mitigation. So they've obviously gone a long way. So in what respect have they fallen short?
Sorry, so yes, so this is the indicative proposed site plan that we have, which then also transponds into the ecology parameters plan. If the letter of the law of the strategy is taken that you have to have a 20-metre buffer on all sides, this is the result of what we would actually come up with, which we said is not very good planning. As a planning outcome, that's not a very good housing development, and to which it's narrow, it seriously under-delivers on the actual allocation in the neighbourhood plan itself, which allocates for 25 houses, and the applications have up to 23. The whole point, the ethos behind the mitigation strategy is to create bat habitat and preserve bat habitat, which, when you combine it with what's proposed on the H2.2 site, which will, at the current stages, have got all this as green infrastructure to preserve the bat roost, we are enhancing that on that side and preserving it on this side, which is, it was these two boundaries that were found to be the most important for known bat movements. This northern boundary wasn't as critical, so that's why the site has evolved in this way. But that itself doesn't leave the buffer as specified in but that's why the mitigation strategy assumes larger sites within the housing in the housing allocations plan.
Are there any other questions from members? No. We don't have the local member with us, so I'm going to go over to Councillor Roger North, who is going to, Evans, I beg his pardon, going to speak for the Parish Council.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's very briefly, it's been brought to the Parish Council's notice that the actual sewage and water runoff from this area could be concerned. We've had some minor flooding in that area and also in Church Lane, where in fact we've actually had non-return valves installed in some of the pipes as well. So there has been concerns mentioned to us concerning this development and the additional runoff in sewers and rain, etc. And we were just making sure that in fact you were aware of this problem and that it can be taken into consideration in the planning application and the approval. So it's just really an objection on that side of it. That's all I need to say about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. North. David, do you want to add anything?
Well, we do have condition 16 as recommended again today, that for the details of the surface water drainage and foul water drainage to still be submitted to approval with or before the submission of the reserve matters applications. So as you can also see, there's a proposal to have an attenuation pond as well. Any further concerns can be, the discharge of conditions application will be an opportunity for comments to come in potentially. But certainly it's something we can make our drainage officer aware of once that application's been submitted.
Chair,
Right.
can I just come in, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so on page 64 of the report, we've summarised the consultation we had with the drainage officer within the council, so representing the lead local flood authority. They have raised no objections. They looked at and appraised the site-specific flood assessment for the site, which would have looked at flood risk prevention, the requirements to make sure that a development doesn't lead to off-site flooding, services itself in terms of the appropriate, not flood mitigation in this case, but surface water management, which Dave refers to in the condition. So page 64 confirms that the drainage officer, lead local flood authority, looked at the flood assessment and raised no objections to the proposal And obviously, as Dave mentioned, there'll be a condition that will bind the development, and there will be a subsequent reserve matters application, which we need to give the details in addition to the discharge of the condition, so that we know exactly what is going to be done on site to manage all surface water. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. This point about the discharge of conditions, do we normally consult the parish council on that? Not usually, but I mean, clearly that's of interest to the parish council here. Let's bear that in mind. Okay, so we're into the debate and we don't have a local member. I'm trying to think who would be the nearest local member. It might be David, or I think it might be you. So do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation to approve.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Parks and Councillor Stuart Palmen are both competing to second the proposal. Does anyone wish to speak on this? David, did you want to say any more? You have a right. As nobody wishes to speak, I need to come back to you.
It does seem to be, with the bat mitigation strategy has been a factor in a number of local applications, past, present and pending. And it's interesting to see that in nearly all cases, the precise requirements of that strategy can't be met and there is some sort of workaround. I think the workaround in this case is very good, especially when it's combined with the much larger estate behind. You know, I hope that the officers continue to show flexibility on the strategy in general.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to put this to the vote. It's been moved and seconded exactly as per the officer's recommendation, and case officer has drawn our attention to that particular condition, which seems to meet the aim of the parish council. All in favour, please show. That is unanimous. So that concludes today's meeting, and we are just within the half hour, so it's not quite a record.
Chair,
but
do we have a reason why the local member couldn't turn up?
I couldn't possibly comment on that, Councillor Seed, but I'm sure he has a reason.
Can I ask that you contact him on behalf of the committee and ask him why he called something to this committee and then didn't turn up? Because I have to say, I think
Let me go to Kenny Green. I mean, this was originally called in. Has it been brought back to committee on another called-in request, or would it normally have been brought back to committee because it had been to committee, Kenny?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. So procedurally, officers took legal advice for a number of applications that were brought to this committee, as well as strategic committee and no doubt north, east and south as well. So every application that had a committee endorsed decision, but the application hadn't been determined, a decision was made that in most cases, if not all cases, the report and member debate included a reference to the NPPF. That was a material circumstance, and officers aren't comfortable or weren't comfortable just making a decision off the back of that original resolution. So the original application called in by Councillor Prickett, I believe, he did, from memory, attend that original meeting. So this return referral to this committee, I don't think necessitated his participation. I mean, he may well have a reason for not being here, I don't know. But we're bringing it back as officers so that members have got a fresh decision to make and to hear any further updates that are pertinent to the application. So it's one of a number, and members no doubt will be seeing more over the next few months. So I don't think there's a particular clash here with the local ward member, councillors. I just think it's a circumstance that officers have brought this application and a number of others back to committee.
Chair, thanks. That's fine. I withdraw my. We have had occasions in the past where members have called applications to committee and not turn up, and I think that is wrong. But on this occasion, clearly it's developed further down the line. And the explanation is perfectly reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seed, and that concludes today's meeting. Thank you very much to everybody for attending.